Welcome to Politics Not Included, where we get to know the person, not their policy. We're creating a space to have real conversations with your elected officials and election candidates to get to know them as a person first. We're hoping these conversations will make it easier to approach and engage your local leadership. Now, before we get started with today's episode, I have a couple of ground rules to cover as always. The first is, Politics Not Included is hosted by the Transparent Campaign Initiative. And in the spirit of transparency, these episodes will be published without being edited. And we're doing this to keep this platform neutral and authentic to all of the guests that we have on the show. Now, what that means for you as a listener or a viewer if you're on our YouTube channel is that you may witness or hear longer pauses than anticipated or some bloopers or stumbling over words. And that's because you're watching or listening to this conversation as if it were live. You're hearing the whole thing in its entirety. And I'm excited to get to share these conversations with you in a true and authentic form. And that leads me to rule number 2, that as you're watching or listening to this, if you have any comments that creep up in your head that if you were sitting in this room with us, you may not have the confidence to say to our face, or you may not feel like the best human being if you did, I'm going to ask you to keep that in your head and out of the comments. And that's because we're just trying to have conversations to get to strengthen our community and to build each other up rather than tear each other down. And in order to do that, I think we need to keep the comments kind. Now that all of that is out of the way, let's get this show started. It is my pleasure to introduce our guest today, Lew Faust. Did I pronounce your last name right?
Yes, okay. Yes.
I should have asked that earlier, but we're in it now, so you're going to see that too. Lew just retired from a 43-year-long career in education, right?
Yes.
And if I'm correct, you had some role in some capacity from 2009 to 2023 in the USD 383 school district.
That's correct. The first 2 years I was with 383, I was the coordinator teacher at Open Door, which was a dropout recovery program, was down on 4th Street. And then in 2011, I was selected as the director of business services. And so the last 12 years of my career until August 1 of 23, I was in the role of director of finance, basically, for 383.
And you retired about 2 years ago. So
yes.
And now you're running for the school board for the district that you served for such a long period of time. What's that like to be running for a position that you were so closely involved with previously as your full-time role?
There's some familiarity, obviously, and there's advantages, maybe disadvantages with that. It's just like if you're interviewing internally within a business or a school district or something, because people know you.
Yeah.
And then you're a known quantity. So there's advantages, but sometimes disadvantages. If you go into a different situation or a completely different community or a different business, it's maybe easier to sell yourself internally. But within the community, my role wasn't the most visible role. I wasn't the superintendent. I wasn't the assistant superintendent. As long as we paid the bills and we made paychecks and payroll and did those things, then my role wasn't quite as out front, so to speak. A lot of people knew my name from either being in the paper or being on the radio occasionally, or my name was on their paycheck, but they didn't necessarily know me as a person. So my challenge right now is to get in front of people and help people to know me as a person and how my experiences and my qualifications hopefully would benefit both the district and the community on the Board of Education.
Yeah, and the last time we talked to you, had mentioned that the role that you most recently retired from is kind of like being like the CFO, but for the school district, right? You're managing funds and budgets and all the stuff that's way over my head. But in that role, you're working fairly closely with the school board, right? Are you communicating with them?
Yes. I mean, especially during, we always called it budget season, which is what the district is in right now. They'll be presenting the budget tomorrow night. My successor will be presenting the budget to the board tomorrow night. So in budget season, which starts really in spring and then develops as you go through the spring and into the early summer, you're doing reports on almost every board meeting kind of on budget development, where we're at, where as far as where you're finishing the current year's budget, and then what you're projecting that your revenue and expenses or additional expenses are going to be, property casualty insurance, health insurance, utilities, whatever it might be for the upcoming year as you work towards building a new budget. I also, in my role, I was kind of the, I don't know, for lack of a better term, the legislative liaison, if you will, for the district. It was one of my responsibilities to follow the legislature and anything that was going on within the legislature as it related to not just school finance, but public schools in general. So a lot of times once the legislature started in January, I would also do legislative updates with the board. So most of the time from January until we got through budget season, which was late August, early September, I had some reporting role with the board almost every board meeting. So, and I looked at it as being a teacher, being an educator. I mean, and I enjoyed those presentations because that's what I was. I always call it putting my teacher hat on, and my job was to try and explain, and sometimes fairly complex and situations and laws or proposals or the budget, and to try and get it into terms that were understandable both for the board and for the public and media that might be present.
Yeah, that's always a more difficult task than it seems, of taking something really complicated and sharing it in a way that's easy to understand, especially when you're dealing with things like a budget or math, numbers. Those things are typically pretty hard to communicate. So
yeah, I used a lot of visuals and PowerPoints and those type of things and spreadsheets, but I tried to make them, simplify them where they were understandable. And because a lot of the budget is just a series of math problems or math, like the district budget, there's a formula that creates the budget authority, and there's a number of steps you go through, and it's numbers times another number that creates a number, and you put it all together and it creates budget authority. So it's just a series of steps. So I tried to simplify that as best I could so that it was clear, hopefully, and understandable for the board.
Yeah. And so speaking of educating others, in total about 43 years in education as a whole for your career, what would you say your favorite part of being in education throughout your career has been?
The first 9 years I was a teacher and coach were good years. I really enjoyed teaching. I enjoyed my coaching role. I coached as assistant football coach and defensive coordinator, and then I was a head wrestling coach, and wrestling was when I first came into education, that was one of the main things that I wanted to coach as far as the coaching side of it. And so those were good years. They're challenging years to do both roles, coaching and teaching, well, in the time you invest. Those were very good years, and working directly with students, in both in the classroom and in the coaching parts of it. But also, in my last position, in the role as director of business here in Manhattan, I had great people to work with in my department, and it was a role that suited me well. I'm a type A type personality, and the people I work with were very much that way. And so that one fit me well as I learned it. I thought I knew a lot about school finance when I started. I was wrong.
Yeah.
I had a lot to learn. In fact, I was a school administrator by trade and a teacher and coach. I'd never really had business and accounting and so on. So I actually went and took an basic accounting class to get some of the fundamentals that I needed to be successful. One of the best things I did, to be honest with you. And that helped me. And once I learned the role and got comfortable in the role and the people around me, then I enjoyed it. And so the close of my career was good as well.
Yeah, that's a really interesting progression to go from starting as a coach in the classroom to becoming the director of business for a school district, and seeing how that evolves and the skills that you learn.
Well, there was a big interim block of 20 years where I was a high school administrator. I was an assistant principal for 7 years, and then a high school principal for the remainder of that 20 years. So I moved into administration after 9 years in the classroom, so I've hit all levels as far as teacher and coach, building administration and then finished in district administration. So I think I know the school business pretty well throughout the 43 years of my career.
Do you think, obviously, that background has something to do with you running for the school board now, especially after being retired and then wanting to get back into it? So what made you want to run and give up a little bit of the retired life to come back and serve the community?
I've always had an interest in policy and leadership, and I mean, obviously that's why I got into administration and then the district level administration and that type of thing. And so my wife and I, as we've discussed it, it's kind of been, that's always been something that's been out there that, maybe that's something I might be interested in doing, when the time came and when I had the time. And so, yes, the 43 years and my knowledge and attending board meetings from 1989 through 2023, I've seen different boards and how they work and the workings of a district. And so it's of interest to me. And to be honest, I missed it a little bit as far as the board meetings. Some people say that's crazy, but I did. And I mean, I purposely, I didn't run in 23 because I didn't want to move right from being an employee into that role. And I wanted to make sure that my successor had a chance to get established in his role and didn't feel like if I was coming onto the board, like I was looking over his shoulder or something. That I didn't want that at all. I wanted to give him a chance to get settled in, so to speak, and be available if I needed to help him. But he's done a great job learning the role and moving forward with it, which is good. So it was just, it felt like it was the right time. And I feel like my experience and my knowledge base that I can give back to the community. Education was a great career for me, and if I can continue to be a part of it and give back, that's something that is obviously of interest to me.
One of the things that has become more apparent to me as I've started this initiative and met with more candidates or people that are currently holding positions is everybody that I've met with thus far is really just a member of the community that wants to get more involved and give back. And not a career politician, somebody that's like you had a full career and now want to give back to the community in a different way. And so this isn't something that you're trained in, it's something that you're kind of learning on the job. As a part of that, have you had, what do you think has been the steepest learning curve thus far in your campaign?
It's still a learning curve. I mean, the campaign and the things that you have to do in the background probably is the biggest thing. There's a lot of work you have to do in the background just to try and get things kind of established to run a campaign and to organize and to try and do fundraising. I've never really done fundraising before, to get volunteers to help, and that's never been something that I've been that involved in before. So that is probably the biggest part of it, and I'm still learning almost every day. It seems like there's something that comes up that where it's not something like I said, I've never really had any experience with it, but again, you tap into people and people who've been in that area, or people who've been former members of the board or campaign and run campaigns, and try and glean what information you can. And so it's been a learning curve. I mean, I wasn't a big social media person. Yeah. Never had a Facebook account before. Yeah. Had no intention of having a Facebook account.
Yeah, but now you have to.
But now I have a personal page and a Lew Faust for school board page, and I have a website for my campaign. And so there's things like that. I've had to have people help me with those things, and and have a Venmo account for donations. And that's again something that I had never. So there's all different layers of it, and it keeps coming along. As the campaign will ramp up in the next 6 weeks, 2 months, as we get closer and closer to election day. I'm sure there's more that I'll learn.
Yeah, and this is something that I've always kind of been curious about. And I was looking at your website page earlier. This is kind of a curveball out here, but more curiosity out of myself. when you are running a campaign, I've always noticed that there's always, so in your case, it would be like Lew Faust for USD 383 school board, and then treasurer. So the treasurer's name is always behind, like at the bottom of the page or whatever advertising it would be. So you have to have a treasurer?
Yes, that's that. Well, there's, you can do a campaign, and if you spend under $1,000 in a primary and the general election, you don't have to have a treasurer for local election. I mean, and it varies from city to city, but in Manhattan, it's that way. I found out. It's one of those things I learned along the way.
Yeah.
And when I first filed, I was going to try and stay under that and not see if I could just self-fund my campaign and not have to do a treasurer, even though I had talked to somebody about the possibility of doing it. Well, that went by the wayside, and I named a treasurer and redid the paperwork to get the treasurer known. And once you do that, once you're going to raise more than $1,000 and or spend more than $1,000, then you have to have a treasurer, and you have to have that disclosure on.
Okay, is that somebody that just kind of volunteers and like is supportive of your campaign?
Yes. That's someone. You can either have just a treasurer, or you can have a campaign committee. Okay. Like one of the others who's running for the board, in fact, the incumbent, Jamie Morris Hardiman, she has a committee. And so you can do it either way. There's either option. And I chose to just go with the treasurer at this point.
Okay. Yeah, I've always been curious about that, and the role that the treasurer would play. So,
and it's just to oversee your finances, and so you have someone else that will sign off and review your finances and make sure that the monies that you raise are accounted for or spent properly, those type of things. It's just part of the way things are structured as far as the accountability piece. And I'm fine with that. I mean, I can manage the money and so on, and then my treasurer will work with me and make sure that everything is accounted for and lines up.
Yeah. Okay. And as you're going through the campaigning process, I mean, the biggest challenge is reaching all aspects of the community. If you're trying to get votes, and so the more people you engage with, the more people know your name, those types of things. Have you done anything like spent time knocking on doors, or are you going to events? Like, what's the...
Going to events, I don't know that I'm going to do a door-to-door. I know we've talked about and probably will do door hangers. I don't know that I'm going to knock on people's doors and try and, talk to them that way. A lot of people don't like that, or they don't, and that kind of thing. But I may. But anytime I can get in front of people, anytime I can go to events, it seems like I get one or two invitations a week starting to pop up to do different things. And so anytime I get the opportunity to go somewhere, to be in front of people, to talk with people, I'm going to do that. As the campaign progresses, we're going to do a booth at like Purple Power Play, and I mean anything like that where you can kind of get out in front of the public to try and help people know that I'm running, because some people I talk to them, they have no idea you're running. They don't necessarily listen to the radio that much or the newspaper or whatever, and so to get the information out and to help people to know who I am and why I'm running. So that's probably the biggest challenge. I'm not, like I said earlier, I'm not maybe that well known. I'm not a Manhattan High grad. I haven't lived in Manhattan all my life, those kind of things, where other people may have that background. I don't. Although we've been in the community, it'll be 16 years in October, so it's been a while.
Yeah. I always wonder what their thought process on things like knocking on doors, because like as you mentioned, some people may not view that as a very positive engagement, but then others may not know. For example, in 2023, to be honest, didn't know that there was a school board election taking place that year until one of the candidates knocked on my door. And in all honesty, that kind of sparked everything with this initiative.
Yeah.
And so you may not know about something that's happening, but then at the same time, you may not have a warm welcome if you're knocking on people's doors and those types of things. So it's always just interesting to hear what strategies you're taking with engagement.
Right. And as I will probably try and take a good portion of my door hangers out and around, and if I run into people as I'm doing that and the opportunity affords itself to talk to people, I'll be more than happy to do that. But and as the campaign progresses, if I feel like the door to door is something that I need to do, then I'm not against doing that either.
Yeah. And so I'll kind of circle back to where we started in this a little bit, that your most recent position that you retired from, you were pretty involved with the school board, and you were attending some of the meetings, or
Every meeting.
the public meeting, yeah. And you've seen the level of engagement from the community. Do you think that enough people are engaged in those things, or would you like to see more people engaged at that level, or do you have thoughts on that?
You always want people to be engaged, and it varies depending if there's some issue that comes up. There's times when there's hardly anybody that will attend a meeting, and there's times when you get large groups of people that will attend a meeting. So it varies from time to time, and depending on what issue is on the agenda. A lot of times people don't know what's on the agenda. And people are busy, and they have their own schedules and their own life and obligations and things to do. It would be nice if people, were involved and paid attention. And you hope they do. But you always, in a public meeting, you always welcome input from the community and involvement. And, especially, I don't know how many budget hearings, 12 years, 12, 13 years of budget hearings, and never had anybody show up for public comment on the budget, and that could be a backhanded compliment that you're doing a good job and there's no issue, there's no question, or it could be apathy. You hope it's not apathy. I know they've had someone show up the years since I retired, but a lot of times, also, with something like the budget, it's a matter of someone being informed and understanding what the process is and that type of thing as well. And so sometimes it's difficult for just the average person without taking a deep dive to understand the process and the depth of what the time that you put into it.
Do you have advice on anybody in the community for a way to get involved? Is it attending those meetings, or do you think it's the best to reach out to those types of people, the people that are serving as board members, or other people that may not be an elected official, but somebody like you in your former role? What's the best way to get involved?
Well, you can always attend a meeting. The meetings are also broadcast on YouTube, so they do that, and Michelle Jones, the communication director, puts they're on, and then they're archived. So if you're not available at the time, but I know board members always are welcome for comment, and in my role before, I was always welcome for comment and for people to come in if they had a question about something. Then a lot of times it's easier to try and have a conversation and explain something and have some time to process it and look at the information, and this is then to try and maybe address it on the spot in a public meeting. But a lot of times, again, it was an education type thing, helping people understand this is what the issues are, or this is the challenge that we have, this is how we're addressing it, and to try and have an open and honest conversation. The biggest part of it, I think, is just an open and honest conversation and educating people about why, what the issues are, or why a decision was made a certain way. Unfortunately, there are situations in all my years as a building administrator, or sometimes even when you're in the district level, if you've got confidentiality involved, if you've got personnel involved, there are some things where you can't be. And then sometimes people think you're withholding. Well, if you're not withholding intentionally, you can't. Whether it's Family Education Rights Privacy Act, if it's FERPA, whether it's personnel. There's things like that sometimes where it feels like you're not being open and transparent. Sometimes you can't.
Yeah. I have one more question for you, and then I'll dive into a series of 3 questions that I will ask everybody.
Okay.
But to leave us with a little nugget of wisdom from your previous experience with all of your ins and outs with the district's budget, what is something that you wish more people knew about the budget or the process?
Well, the process for public schools in Kansas is driven by a formula, and the formula, to a great extent, is driven by your student enrollment. There isn't a lot of wiggle room that the district has, or the wiggle room is not a good term, but a lot of discretion. Not a lot of discretionary room that a district has. And you build a budget. The numbers drive the budget, create your budget authority, and you have to do business within that authority. And the other piece of it that I would say is that the business of 383 or schools in Kansas is teaching and learning. That's what we're all about. But it is business. It takes, the biggest, as in any business, your biggest expense is personnel. And in the case of 383, it's teachers. It's paraprofessionals, it's bus drivers, it's food service workers, it's maintenance and custodian. There's over 1,600 employees in the district, and so it becomes a big business and a big part of the overall economy in the city of Manhattan and in the region.
Mm-hmm. Great, thanks. So I'll wrap this up with 3 questions that everybody gets asked.
Okay.
Do you remember the first time you voted?
Yes. Presidential election 1976. I just turned 18.
Yeah, and were you really excited to go vote, or?
Yes. Yeah, even I don't know why. I go all the way back. I remember in 5th grade studying the Revolutionary War and being intrigued with it. I've always been a history and liked history, and then it evolved into liking politics and policy and that type of thing. I taught American history and American government were my teaching areas, and so that's kind of always been a love of mine. So, yep, I remember very much so. I was in Lawrence, was an undergraduate student at KU in 1976 presidential election.
Yeah.
Telling my age by doing that.
Full disclosure. Why would you say voting is important to you?
Just as a citizen, being involved, being active and being involved, being informed about what's going on both in your community, in your state, at the national level. If you don't take advantage and use your ability to vote as a citizen, then it's kind of the old adage, if you don't participate, you don't have much room to complain and gripe. And if you don't like what's going on, well, one of the ways you do something about it is you get involved or you vote and be a part of the solution. Just sitting back and complaining about what's not right doesn't usually solve anything.
Yeah. And how can people find you if they want to connect with you or follow along with your campaign? What's the best way to reach you?
They can. My Facebook is Lew Faust for School Board. The web address is lewfaust.com. That's LEWFAUST.com. My email address, there's a link on the website and I believe on the Facebook page if they want to email me. So there's numerous ways to get information or to follow what's going on, or if someone has a question or needs to connect, the email address is there. It's lfaust1@cox.net.
Well, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and I'll leave us with follow along on our social media pages for announcements for new episodes. Our Instagram is @TransparentCampaigns. The Facebook page is Transparent Campaign Initiative. And you can go to our website to find more information on the USD 383 school board race. And our website is transparentcampaigns.org. Thanks again for joining us.
Thank you. I appreciate it.